November 8, 1943. 0547 hours. Bougainville Island, Solomon Islands. In the pre-dawn darkness, Japanese Lieutenant Takeshi Yamada crouched in his foxhole, listening to a sound that would haunt him for the rest of his life, a sound his men would come to call akuma no ko, the devil's voice. It was a mechanical staccato, impossibly fast, impossibly sustained, cutting through the jungle like a chainsaw through silk. Within 60 seconds, his entire platoon of 42 men would cease to exist. The weapon responsible wasn't a bomb, wasn't artillery, wasn't even particularly large. It was a water-cooled machine gun that could fire 450 rounds per minute for hours without stopping. The Japanese had nothing that could match it. And across the Pacific, this weapon was about to rewrite the rules of infantry combat forever. The M1917A1 Browning heavy machine gun that devastated Lieutenant Yamada's position that morning represented the culmination of 30 years of American weapons development. Designed by John Moses Browning in 1917 and refined through 2 decades of testing, this weapon would become the most feared infantry support system in the Pacific theater. The technical specifications, documented in Army Ordnance Department records from 1940, revealed why this weapon was so devastating. The M1917A1 fired the .30-06 Springfield cartridge at a cyclic rate of 450 to 600 rounds per minute. Unlike air-cooled weapons that overheated after sustained fire, the water-cooled jacket surrounding the barrel allowed continuous operation for extended periods. The cooling system held approximately 1 gallon of water that absorbed heat from the barrel during firing. In tropical conditions, this water would boil, requiring replacement every 750 to 1,000 rounds, but the weapon itself could continue firing indefinitely as long as water and ammunition were supplied. The maximum effective range exceeded 1,200 yards against area targets, with lethal accuracy maintained at 800 yards against point targets. Each gun weighed 103 pounds with the tripod, requiring a crew of 4 men, gunner, assistant gunner, and 2 ammunition bearers. But this weight translated into stability that made the weapon devastatingly accurate compared to lighter machine guns. Japanese forces in November 1943 possessed nothing comparable. Their Type 92 heavy machine gun, the Shiki Kikanju, fired only 450 rounds per minute maximum and suffered from a complex feed system using rigid metal strips that frequently jammed in jungle humidity. More critically, the Type 92 was air-cooled and required barrel changes after 250 rounds of sustained fire. Japanese tactical doctrine recognized these limitations, planning machine gun employment in short bursts rather than sustained fire. The disparity became apparent during the Guadalcanal campaign that began in August 1942. Marine Corps after-action reports documented Japanese night attacks being stopped cold by sustained machine gun fire that Japanese forces simply could not replicate. While Japanese infantry advanced with bolt-action rifles and light machine guns requiring frequent barrel changes, American positions could maintain continuous fire that created impassable walls of bullets. The psychological impact was immediate and profound. Japanese soldiers captured during the Guadalcanal campaign told Marine intelligence officers about the terror of facing weapons that never stopped shooting. One prisoner, according to declassified interrogation reports, stated that Japanese soldiers believed Americans had invented a gun that fired automatically without human operators, because no man could sustain such fire rates. The Battle of the Tenere River on August 21, 1942, provided the first large-scale demonstration of what sustained heavy machine gun fire could accomplish. Japanese Colonel Kaineo Ichiki led 916 men of the 28th Infantry Regiment in a nighttime assault against Marine positions. The Marines, according to the 1st Marine Division's official history, had positioned 8 M1917A1 Browning machine guns covering the approaches to their defensive line. At 0310 hours, Ichiki's forces attacked in traditional banzai charge formation. The Marine machine gunners, following doctrine developed at Quantico, opened fire at 600 yards. The sustained fire, documented in battalion records, continued for 47 minutes without pause. Ammunition bearers shuttled 250 round belts forward while gunners traversed their weapons back and forth across the killing zone. The water in the cooling jackets boiled, steam rising into the tropical night, but the guns never stopped firing. By dawn, 777 Japanese soldiers lay dead in front of Marine positions. Marine casualties, 44 killed and wounded, none from the actual assault, all from preliminary artillery fire. The kill ratio was unprecedented in modern warfare. The superiority of the Browning M1917A1 wasn't accidental, it represented systematic American engineering philosophy that prioritized reliability and sustained performance over portability. Arsenal records from Rock Island Arsenal and Springfield Armory document the exhaustive testing protocols that created this reliability. Between 1920 and 1940, ordnance testing boards fired over 15 million rounds through test weapons, documenting failure modes and implementing design improvements. The recoil-operated mechanism designed by Browning used a short recoil system where the barrel and bolt recoiled together for approximately 1/2 inch before unlocking. This system was machined to tolerances of 1/1000th of an inch, creating reliability that Japanese weapons could not match. The ammunition feed system used disintegrating metallic link belts that fed smoothly even when caked with jungle mud. Ordnance testing at Aberdeen Proving Ground in Maryland demonstrated the system could function after submersion in salt water, burial in sand, and exposure to temperature extremes from -20 to +130 degrees Fahrenheit. Japanese Type 92 guns, by contrast, frequently jammed when their rigid feed strips became even slightly bent or corroded. American industrial capacity meant machine guns could be produced with precision manufacturing that Japanese industry couldn't replicate. Browning machine guns had interchangeable parts, any component from any gun could be swapped into any other gun and function perfectly. Japanese weapons, manufactured to looser tolerances by an industrial base already stretched thin, required hand-fitting of parts and careful matching of components. The tactical employment of these weapons evolved rapidly through combat experience. Marine Corps schools at Quantico developed machine gun doctrine based on lessons from Belleau in World War I, refined through peacetime training at Camp Lejeune and Camp Pendleton. By 1943, Marine machine gun sections had perfected interlocking fields of fire, grazing fire techniques, and defensive fire planning that maximized the weapon's sustained fire capability. Staff Sergeant Raymond Jacobs, commanding a machine gun section during the New Georgia campaign in July 1943, described the tactical employment in his after-action report. We positioned guns to create a beaten zone where every square yard would receive fire. The Japanese thought they could rush through. They couldn't. We'd trained to the point where my gunners could maintain sustained fire while assistant gunners swapped barrels and ammunition bearers kept belts coming forward. We never had to stop shooting. The logistics of sustained fire were staggering. Each M1917A1 could theoretically fire 27,000 rounds per hour if ammunition supply could keep pace. In practice, sustained rates of 200 to 300 rounds per minute were common during defensive actions. A single machine gun section could expend 10,000 rounds during a night defensive action. Marine logistics units developed specialized ammunition handling procedures, pre-positioned ammunition at defensive positions, and created rapid resupply systems. By comparison, Japanese logistics struggled to supply even basic ammunition. Documents captured on Saipan revealed that Japanese units were often limited to 120 rounds per rifleman for entire campaigns. Heavy machine guns received priority, but even then, Japanese after-action reports noted ammunition shortages forcing guns to conserve fire. American abundance versus Japanese scarcity would prove decisive. The sustained firepower of American heavy machine guns didn't just kill Japanese soldiers, it shattered the psychological foundation of their tactical doctrine. Japanese military training since the Russo-Japanese War of 1904 to 1905 had emphasized spirit over material, the belief that determination and willingness to sacrifice could overcome technological disadvantages. The M1917A1 Browning proved this philosophy catastrophically wrong. Captured Japanese diaries and documents, translated by the Allied translator and interpreter section, revealed the profound psychological impact of facing sustained machine gun fire. A diary recovered from a deceased Japanese officer on New Georgia in August 1943 contained an entry dated July 28, "The American machine guns fire without ceasing. Our men advance with courage, but courage cannot survive when bullets fall like rain that never stops. Men who have faced death bravely in 10 battles flee from these weapons. I do not blame them. I too feel the terror." Another document, a report from Captain Hiroshi Tanaka of the 229th Infantry Regiment captured on Bougainville, described the effect in clinical terms: "American defensive positions employ machine guns in numbers we cannot match. Their weapons sustain fire far beyond our capabilities. Assaults that succeeded in China and Malaya fail here. Our men reach within 100 meters of American positions and can advance no further. The fire is continuous. There is no pause to exploit, no moment when courage can bridge the final distance." The Japanese High Command recognized the problem but lacked solutions. Imperial General Headquarters issued Tactical Directive No. 157 in March 1943, discovered in captured documents on Saipan, instructing units to avoid frontal assaults against positions defended by American heavy machine guns and to employ infiltration tactics and night approaches to negate American firepower advantage. But these directives couldn't change battlefield mathematics. American machine guns created killing zones that couldn't be crossed regardless of tactics. The Battle of Tarawa in November 1943 demonstrated that even heavily fortified Japanese positions couldn't overcome American machine gun firepower once Marines established beachheads. Japanese Rear Admiral Keiji Shibasaki had boasted that 1,000,000 men cannot take Tarawa in 100 years. His 4,836 defenders held elaborate fortifications built over months. Yet once Marines established positions ashore with heavy machine guns, Japanese counterattacks failed catastrophically. Marine Corps records from the 2nd Marine Division document that machine gun sections landed on Bougainville Island on November 21, 1943, immediately established defensive positions. That night, Japanese forces launched a counterattack with approximately 300 troops attempting to push the Marines back into the sea. The attack lasted 17 minutes. Marine machine gunners, firing at point-blank range, killed an estimated 275 attackers. The counterattack survivors retreated to their bunkers and never attempted another massed assault. Staff Sergeant William Bordelon, commanding a machine gun section on Tarawa, described the action in his after-battle report. "They came straight at us, screaming, bayonets fixed. We opened fire at 50 yards. The gun just chewed through them. We fired maybe 800 rounds in those few minutes. When it was over, you couldn't see the sand in front of us, just bodies stacked on bodies. Some were still alive, trying to crawl back. We ceased fire. There was no point. The attack was broken." Japanese tactical innovation attempted to counter American firepower superiority through infiltration and dispersed attacks, avoiding the massed charges that had proven suicidal. But these tactics reduced the offensive power that had made Japanese forces so formidable in 1941 to 1942. Documents from Japanese 17th Army headquarters on Bougainville, captured in March 1944, acknowledged, "Our forces have adopted defensive posture due to inability to mass forces against American positions. American machine gun fire prevents concentration necessary for offensive operations." The psychological trauma extended beyond immediate combat. Japanese soldiers who survived encounters with American machine guns exhibited what modern psychology would recognize as combat stress disorder. Medical records from Japanese field hospitals, captured on Saipan, documented soldiers refusing to participate in attacks, exhibiting tremors and anxiety attacks at the sound of machine gun fire, even in training. Japanese military discipline was harsh, but commanders increasingly recognized that forcing traumatized men into suicidal attacks achieved nothing. Lieutenant Saburo Hayashi, a company commander in the 38th Division on New Guinea, kept a diary later recovered by Australian forces. His entry from December 14, 1943, recorded, "My men are brave, but they are not machines. After 3 failed attacks against American positions, they flinch at the order to advance. They have watched entire platoons disappear into American fire. They know they march toward death, and death without purpose. We cannot reach the American positions, cannot silence their guns. To order another attack is to murder my own men for no military gain. The captured diary of Sergeant Kenji Matsumoto, recovered on Peleliu in September 1944, provided even more explicit testimony. We call the American machine guns akuma no buki, the devil's weapon. They do not fire like weapons, they fire like factories produce goods, endlessly, mechanically, without human limitation. Our machine guns are weapons. American machine guns are industrial machinery that manufactures death. There is no courage sufficient to cross the ground they defend. The effectiveness of American heavy machine guns represented more than superior weapons design, it demonstrated the fundamental difference between American industrial warfare and Japanese martial philosophy. Every aspect of American machine gun employment reflected industrial age thinking, standardization, mass production, abundant supply, and systematic training. Rock Island Arsenal in Illinois and Springfield Armory in Massachusetts produced M1917A1 Brownings at rates Japanese industry couldn't approach. Production records from the War Department document that American arsenals manufactured over 53,000 M1917A1 machine guns between 1941 and 1945. This represented approximately one heavy machine gun for every 250 American combat troops in the Pacific Theater. Japanese production of Type 92 heavy machine guns totaled approximately 45,000 units for the entire war across all theaters, supplying an army of millions. The American supply chain ensured that machine guns never lacked ammunition. Ordnance Corps records document that the Pacific Theater received over 12 billion rounds of .30-06 ammunition during the war. This seemingly impossible number, 12 billion cartridges, translated to battlefield abundance that Japanese forces couldn't comprehend. Marine machine gun sections routinely had access to tens of thousands of rounds. Japanese units rationed ammunition, often holding fire to conserve their limited supplies. The industrial philosophy extended to training. Marine Corps machine gun schools at Camp Lejeune and Camp Pendleton trained thousands of gunners using standardized curricula. Students fired thousands of rounds during training, learning weapon maintenance, immediate action drills for malfunctions, and tactical employment. Training doctrine emphasized sustained fire, ammunition management, and crew coordination. Graduates arrived in the Pacific as specialists in machine gun employment. Japanese training, by contrast, emphasized individual marksmanship and hand-to-hand combat. Machine gunners received far less specialized training. Japanese tactical manuals, captured and translated, revealed that machine gun employment was taught as extension of rifle tactics rather than as distinct discipline requiring specialized skills. The cultural emphasis on warrior spirit over technical proficiency meant Japanese gunners were often less proficient with their weapons than American counterparts. The Battle of Bougainville in November 1943 provided clear demonstration of this disparity. When the 3rd Marine Division landed at Cape Torokina on November 1, they brought 120 M1917A1 Brownings. Japanese forces defending the area, approximately 23,000 troops of the 17th Army, possessed fewer than 80 Type 92 machine guns for a much larger force. More critically, Japanese guns were supplied with approximately 500 rounds per weapon for the initial defense. American machine guns had access to effectively unlimited ammunition, ships offshore carried millions of rounds ready for resupply. The Piva Forks engagement on November 24, 1943, demonstrated how industrial abundance enabled American tactical success. Japanese forces launched a coordinated attack with approximately 1,200 troops attempting to overrun Marine positions. The Marine defenders, outnumbered approximately 3-1, held defensive positions with interlocking machine gun fire. The battle lasted 6 hours. Marine machine guns fired an estimated 80,000 rounds. Japanese casualties exceeded 800 killed. Marine casualties, 115 killed and wounded, primarily from Japanese mortar fire before the assault. Captain Robert Anderson, commanding Company I, 3rd Battalion, 3rd Marines, described the engagement in his after-action report. The Japanese attacked with determination and courage. But determination cannot overcome mathematics. We had 12 machine guns covering the approaches. Each gun had 10,000 rounds immediately available, with more available by radio request. We fired continuously for 6 hours. The guns ran hot, we changed barrels repeatedly, but we never ran short of ammunition. The Japanese couldn't sustain their attack because our fire never slackened. The mathematical advantage was crushing. American machine guns firing 450 rounds per minute meant that 12 guns could theoretically deliver 5,400 rounds per minute, or 90 rounds per second. Even at reduced sustained fire rates of 200 rounds per minute, the defensive fire density was impossible to cross. Japanese forces armed primarily with bolt-action rifles firing perhaps 15 rounds per minute couldn't generate return fire sufficient to suppress American positions. Japanese tactical reports captured throughout the Pacific repeatedly noted this firepower disparity. A report from the 41st Infantry Regiment on New Britain, captured in March 1944, stated, "American defensive positions cannot be assaulted frontally. Their machine gun fire creates zones of death no infantry can cross. Recommend only night infiltration and small unit actions." Another report, from the 51st Division on New Guinea, was even more blunt. American firepower superiority renders our infantry tactics obsolete. We cannot mass forces for attack without suffering catastrophic casualties. The industrial advantage extended to maintenance and repair. American units had trained armorers, abundant spare parts, and maintenance procedures that kept weapons operational. Japanese units, operating at the end of tenuous supply lines, often couldn't repair damaged weapons. Captured Japanese equipment reports from Saipan documented that up to 30% of heavy machine guns were non-operational due to parts shortages, corrosion, or battle damage. American weapons remained operational at rates exceeding 90% even in harsh jungle conditions. The invasion of Saipan in June 1944 marked the pinnacle of American heavy machine gun employment and the nadir of Japanese infantry tactics against them. Japanese Lieutenant General Yoshitsugu Saito commanded approximately 31,000 troops defending the island. American forces, primarily the 2nd and 4th Marine Divisions plus the Army's 27th Infantry Division, brought over 400 M1917A1 Brownings ashore. The Japanese defensive strategy on Saipan, detailed in captured planning documents, called for a massive counterattack to drive American forces back into the sea before they could establish secure beachheads. The attack, planned for the night of June 16 to 17, 1944, would commit approximately 3,000 troops including tank units, in what Japanese commanders hoped would be a decisive blow. American intelligence, through code-breaking and prisoner interrogation, anticipated the counterattack. Marine commanders positioned machine gun sections in depth, creating multiple defensive lines with overlapping fields of fire. The 2nd Marine Division's defensive sector alone positioned 48 heavy machine guns along a 3-mile front. Artillery fire plans were coordinated to work in conjunction with machine gun fire, creating a defense in depth that would prove unstoppable. The Japanese attack began at 0300 hours on June 17. Approximately 3,000 Japanese troops, supported by 31 Type 95 light tanks and Type 97 medium tanks, advanced against Marine positions. What followed became known among Marines as the Marianas Turkey Shoot on Land, a reference to the aerial battle that had devastated Japanese naval aviation days earlier. Marine machine gunners, following refined doctrine developed through 2 years of Pacific combat, held fire until Japanese forces reached optimal killing range, approximately 300 yards. At 0308 hours, 48 heavy machine guns opened fire simultaneously. The coordinated fire, described in after-action reports as a solid wall of tracers, tore into the advancing Japanese formation. Gunnery Sergeant Harold Peterson, commanding machine gun platoon, 2nd Battalion, 6th Marines, provided detailed testimony in his post-battle report. "We could see them coming in the moonlight, tanks and infantry together. We let them close to 300 yards, then every gun opened up at once. It was like turning on a light switch. Suddenly the entire front was nothing but tracers and explosions. The Japanese infantry were cut down in waves. The tanks kept coming, but without infantry support they were helpless. We concentrated fire on the lead tanks, killing the commanders exposed in the hatches, then shifted to the infantry trying to advance behind them. The battle lasted 3 hours. Japanese forces made multiple attempts to break through Marine lines, each time running into sustained machine gun fire that made advance impossible. Marine gunners changed barrels repeatedly, assistant gunners poured water into boiling cooling jackets, ammunition bearers shuttled belts forward. The guns never stopped firing. By dawn, the counterattack had been completely destroyed. American forces counted approximately 2,200 Japanese dead in front of Marine positions. 27 destroyed Japanese tanks littered the battlefield. Marine casualties, 97 killed and 185 wounded, many from Japanese artillery fire preceding the attack rather than from the assault itself. The ammunition expenditure was staggering. The 48 machine guns in the 2nd Marine Division sector fired an estimated 180,000 rounds during the 3-hour battle, nearly 4,000 rounds per gun. Supply sergeants worked through the night bringing ammunition forward from beach dumps. Not a single machine gun position ran out of ammunition. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The climax of American heavy machine gun dominance came during the final days of the Saipan campaign in July 1944, when Japanese forces launched the largest banzai charge of the Pacific War. What followed would demonstrate not just the tactical superiority of American weapons, but the complete obsolescence of Japanese infantry doctrine against industrial firepower. By July 6, 1944, Japanese forces on Saipan had been compressed into the northern tip of the island. Lieutenant General Yoshitsugu Saito and Vice Admiral Chuchi Nagumo, facing inevitable defeat, authorized a final attack involving all remaining combat-capable troops, approximately 4,300 soldiers, sailors, and walking wounded. The order, recovered from Sato's headquarters after the battle, read, "Whether we attack or whether we stay where we are, there is only death. However, in death there is life. I will advance with those who remain to deliver another blow to the American enemy, and leave my bones on Saipan as a bulwark of the Pacific." The American defensive line that would receive this attack stretched from Tanapag Harbor to the island's eastern coast, approximately 2 miles of front held primarily by the 27th Infantry Division and elements of Marine units. Intelligence warnings from code-breaking and prisoner interrogation had alerted commanders to expect a major attack. Machine gun positions were reinforced, ammunition stockpiled, and artillery fire plans prepared. The attack began at 0445 hours on July 7. In the pre-dawn darkness, thousands of Japanese troops emerged from their positions and advanced toward American lines. Many carried rifles, some had only bamboo spears or clubs, wounded soldiers hobbled forward on crutches. They came in waves, screaming traditional battle cries, determined to die in one final assault rather than face the shame of surrender. The 1st and 2nd Battalions of the 105th Infantry Regiment received the main weight of the attack. These Army units, though less experienced than Marine formations, had been reinforced with additional machine gun sections, 36 M1917A1 Brownings covering their defensive sector. When Japanese forces reached 400 yards, the machine guns opened fire. Lieutenant Colonel William O'Brien, commanding the 1st Battalion, described the scene in his after-action report. "They came in numbers I had never seen before, waves of them, hundreds, maybe thousands. The machine guns opened up and the tracers lit up the whole battlefield. You could see them falling, but more kept coming. Our gunners traversed back and forth, back and forth. The barrels glowed red-hot even through the cooling jackets. We changed barrels, poured water, kept shooting. They kept coming. The attack lasted over 4 hours. Japanese forces threw themselves at American positions in repeated waves. American machine gunners, fighting through exhaustion, maintained sustained fire. When guns overheated despite water cooling, crews swapped out barrels in seconds and resumed firing. Ammunition bearers formed human chains passing belts forward from stockpiles hundreds of yards behind the lines. The guns never stopped shooting. Artillery fire supplemented machine gun fire, but it was the sustained, precise fire of the Brownings that created the impenetrable barrier. At point-blank range, some Japanese soldiers reached within 30 yards of American positions before falling. In several locations, hand-to-hand fighting occurred when small groups broke through. But the vast majority died in the killing zones created by interlocking machine gun fire. By 0900 hours, the attack had spent itself. The battlefield before American positions was carpeted with Japanese dead. American forces counted approximately 4,311 Japanese bodies, virtually the entire attacking force. The 105th Infantry Regiment had suffered heavy casualties, approximately 406 killed and 512 wounded, many from the initial onslaught and hand-to-hand fighting, but the defensive line had held. The machine guns had stopped the largest banzai charge of the war. Colonel Russell Ayres, commanding the 165th Infantry Regiment adjacent to the 105th, witnessed the battle and recorded in his official report, "The Japanese came with incredible courage and determination. But courage cannot overcome firepower of this magnitude. Our machine guns created a wall of lead that simply could not be crossed. Those who made it through the initial fire zones were already too few to break our lines. The weapon, not the men, won this battle." The aftermath of the Saipan Banzai charge marked a turning point in Japanese military thinking. Captured documents from subsequent battles showed Japanese commanders explicitly ordering troops to avoid massed attacks. The tactical guidance issued to forces defending Iwo Jima and Okinawa emphasized defensive positions, dispersed formations, and avoidance of frontal assaults. The Banzai charge, once the terrifying signature of Japanese infantry tactics, had been rendered suicidal by American machine gun firepower. General Saito committed suicide after the failed attack. Admiral Nagumo, who had commanded the carrier fleet at Pearl Harbor, also took his own life. Their deaths symbolized more than personal defeat, they represented the end of Japanese offensive capability in the Pacific. The warrior spirit that had driven Japanese expansion across Asia had shattered against American industrial firepower. The heavy machine gun, more than any other infantry weapon, had demonstrated that in modern warfare, industrial capacity trumped martial courage. The devastating effectiveness of American heavy machine guns created profound psychological and moral complexities for the men who operated them. While the weapons saved countless American lives by stopping Japanese attacks, the intimate nature of machine gun combat, watching men fall in waves through the gunners' sights, created psychological burdens that many gunners carried for the rest of their lives. Veterans Administration psychiatric records from the post-war period, declassified in the 1990s, documented that machine gunners experienced combat trauma at rates comparable to flamethrower operators and significantly higher than riflemen. The continuous nature of machine gun fire, the visual awareness of casualties being inflicted, and the sheer number of enemy soldiers killed created what military psychiatrists termed mechanical killing stress. Sergeant Thomas Whitfield, who served as a machine gunner through Guadalcanal, Tarawa, and Saipan, provided testimony to VA counselors in 1947, "I did my duty and I'd do it again. Those guns saved my life and the lives of my buddies dozens of times. But I see it every night. Waves of men falling, and I'm the one cutting them down. Not in the heat of battle, not with a rifle where you aim at one man. With the machine gun, you traverse back and forth and they fall like wheat before a scythe. You kill efficiently, mechanically. That's what haunts me, the mechanical nature of it." The Japanese perspective, documented through post-war interviews and captured diaries, revealed the existential terror these weapons created. For soldiers trained in Bushido warrior code, there was no honor in death before machine guns. Traditional Japanese military culture celebrated death in close combat, the warrior's death with sword or bayonet. Death from sustained machine gun fire, cut down at distance without opportunity to close with the enemy, contradicted fundamental beliefs about honorable military service. A post-war interview with Lieutenant Ryuichi Nakamura, one of the few Japanese officers to survive the Saipan Banzai charge, captured this psychological dimension. "We were taught that spirit could overcome material disadvantages. We believed courage and willingness to sacrifice would allow us to close with the enemy. The American machine guns proved this false. We died at distances where our courage meant nothing. Men who had fought bravely in China, who had survived Guadalcanal and New Guinea, broke and ran from the sound of those guns. Not from cowardice, but from the recognition that advancing meant certain death with no possibility of honorable combat. The weapon removed honor from death. American military chaplains reported increased requests for counseling from machine gun crews compared to other infantry units. Chaplain Lieutenant Robert Hayes, serving with the 4th Marine Division, documented in his ministry reports from Saipan, the machine gunners carry a unique burden. They inflict mass casualties in a way that other infantrymen do not. A rifleman fires at individual targets. A machine gunner kills by the dozen, by the hundred. Many struggle with the industrial nature of what they've done. They understand intellectually that they fought defensively, that they saved American lives, but the visual memory of continuous killing weighs heavily. The industrial nature of machine gun warfare also created disconnection from traditional military values. American military culture, like Japanese, traditionally celebrated individual courage, marksmanship, and close combat. Machine gun warfare reduced combat to logistics, ammunition supply, sustained fire rates, and mechanical reliability. The outcome of battles was determined before fighting began by industrial capacity rather than individual heroism. This reality was recognized in official military assessments. A War Department analysis from 1945, examining lessons learned from Pacific operations, concluded, the heavy machine gun represents the transformation of infantry combat from individual skill-based engagement to industrial process. Victory in machine gun combat is determined by production capacity, supply chain effectiveness, and systematic training rather than individual warrior prowess. This transformation favors industrialized nations but may create post-war adjustment challenges for personnel. Yet the same analysis acknowledged the weapon's crucial role. Heavy machine guns, particularly the M1917A1 Browning, saved thousands of American lives by stopping Japanese attacks that would have otherwise succeeded through numerical superiority and willingness to accept casualties. The psychological cost to gunners is regrettable but must be weighed against lives saved. The weapon's mechanical efficiency in killing proved more humane than prolonged close combat alternatives. Japanese military assessments from the post-war period, compiled by occupation authorities interviewing former officers, universally acknowledged the decisive impact of American machine gun firepower. Colonel Masanobu Tsuji, a staff officer who survived the war, wrote in his post-war memoir, "We trained our soldiers to die bravely. The Americans trained their soldiers to kill efficiently. We believed spirit could overcome material disadvantage. The Americans proved that sufficient material advantage makes spirit irrelevant. Their machine guns did not merely kill our soldiers, they rendered our entire military philosophy obsolete. We sent brave men with rifles against industrial machinery designed to kill. The outcome was inevitable." The M1917A1 Browning heavy machine gun's impact extended far beyond World War II, fundamentally reshaping infantry tactics and military philosophy for generations. The weapon demonstrated conclusively that in modern warfare, industrial capacity and technological superiority could overcome numerical advantage and warrior ethos. This lesson would influence military development through the Korean War, Vietnam, and into the modern era. Immediate post-war analysis by the War Department documented the weapon's decisive contribution to victory in the Pacific. A comprehensive study completed in 1946 calculated that heavy machine guns had prevented an estimated 15,000 to 20,000 American casualties by stopping Japanese attacks that would have otherwise reached American lines. The study concluded, the M1917A1 Browning heavy machine gun proved to be one of the most cost-effective weapons systems deployed in the Pacific theater. The industrial investment in manufacturing, supplying, and training for these weapons yielded casualty prevention returns that far exceeded the resources invested. The weapon's design influenced subsequent machine gun development for decades. The M1919 Browning, an air-cooled derivative that served through Vietnam, incorporated the same basic recoil operation and feed system. The M60 machine gun, introduced in 1957, drew heavily on Browning's operating principles. Even modern weapons like the M240 machine gun, still in service today, trace their lineage to design concepts proven on Pacific battlefields in 1942 to 1945. The tactical doctrine developed around the M1917A1 became foundational for modern machine gun employment. The principles of interlocking fields of fire, sustained fire planning, and coordinated defensive positions established in the Pacific remained core components of U.S. military doctrine through subsequent conflicts. Marine Corps and Army field manuals from the 1950s through the 1990s explicitly referenced lessons learned from Pacific machine gun operations. For Japanese military forces, reconstituted after the war as the Japan Self-Defense Forces, the lessons were equally profound. Post-war Japanese military doctrine completely abandoned the banzai charge mentality, instead emphasizing defensive operations, combined arms integration, and respect for firepower superiority. Japanese military academies studied Pacific War battles as cautionary examples of what occurs when martial spirit confronts industrial firepower without adequate technological parity. The human legacy proved more complex. Veterans of Pacific machine gun operations reunited at annual gatherings, forming bonds forged through shared experiences of sustained combat. These reunions, documented by military historians, revealed both pride in accomplishment and ongoing struggle with psychological burden. Sergeant Daniel Morrison, who served as a machine gunner on Guadalcanal, Tarawa, and Saipan, spoke at the 50th anniversary reunion in 1992, "We did what we had to do. Those guns saved American lives, and I'm proud of that. But I also carry the weight of what we did." Both things are true. Japanese veterans who faced American machine guns also gathered, their own reunions marked by reflection on the futility of tactics that sent men against weapons they couldn't overcome. Lieutenant Kenji Hayashi, who survived the Saipan Banzai charge, attended a joint American-Japanese reunion in 1994. His statement, translated and recorded by military historians, captured the reconciliation: "We fought bravely, but we fought foolishly. Our commanders sent us against weapons we could not defeat with courage alone. The American gunners were doing their duty, as we were doing ours. The tragedy was that our leaders did not understand modern warfare. We blamed the American weapons then. Now I understand that we should have blamed our own outdated tactics." The National Archives preserves extensive documentation of machine gun operations across the Pacific, battalion war diaries, after-action reports, ammunition expenditure records, and personal testimonies. These documents provide detailed accounting of the weapon's tactical employment and strategic impact. The Marine Corps History Division maintains that the M1917A1 Browning represents one of the most significant infantry weapons of World War II, comparable in impact to tanks and aircraft in its ability to shape battlefield outcomes. Modern military historians recognize the M1917A1 as a pivotal weapon that demonstrated the final assessment belongs to the men who faced these weapons. Former Japanese soldier Hiroshi Tanaka, providing testimony for a documentary in 2005 at age 82, offered this conclusion: "We called them akuma no buki, the devil's weapon. Not because they were evil, but because they seemed to have supernatural power. They never stopped firing, never ran out of ammunition, never gave us a chance to close the distance. Now I understand, they were not supernatural. They were simply the product of a nation with greater industrial capacity. The Americans brought factory production to the battlefield. We brought warrior spirit. In modern war, factories defeat warriors every time." Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.